Welcome to this first podcast that we are doing via Teams. Typically, normally we are doing this in a live session, 2 chairs, 1 room, or maybe 3 chairs. But now we are in a virtual room together with Sana, it's our guest, and with Dave, my colleague here at the Plate HQ. Sana, can you maybe introduce yourself?
Yep, definitely. So my name is Sana Remiki, and I'm the CEO and co-founder of Consia, an experience orchestration platform built for composable ecosystems. I'm also an ambassador at the MOC Alliance, which is an organization built to guide and direct companies on how best to build, well, large enterprise organizations, I would say, to build their software ecosystems in a way that is built for the future as well. So that's me.
Nice to have you. And you're quite active on LinkedIn these days with all kind of posts and comments about composable architecture, content management, and the different layers that we are having. So you're quite experienced, I guess, in the CMS market.
Sorry, say that again.
You're quite experienced in the CMS.
Yes. Yeah, so most of my career, I have been working with large organizations to help them build digital experiences. And as you know, when you're dealing with larger enterprises, the experience is based on content and data that is coming from a lot of different systems. So CMS, of course, they see as the very core of that ecosystem. So far, it's always been that way. And so, working with organizations to model their content in a way that is better for building discoverable data, discoverable content for search, also just to build a good overall user experience. That's been a bunch of the experience that I've had over many years.
Nice, because I think that you see the different changes that are going on and the different, let's say, influence of a headless CMS and the different types of CMS that are out there. Can you take us with you to let's say, what are the most remarkable changes in the industry from a CMS perspective?
Yeah, absolutely. So I would say about 10, 15 years ago, we had this notion of a web CMS. So you have, companies like Episerver, or you have WordPress, or the platforms that were built, they were monolith, what we call monolith platforms. Is maybe not the nicest term to use, but the idea was that the content marketer would go into one interface, and they would be able to create their content and see what that looks like on the front end in one go. They didn't have to create content here and the presentation is somewhere else. They knew exactly what they were creating. It was a WYSIWYG, what you see is what you get type of an interface that they had. But the problem with the web CMS was that it was very much focused on web only. With the explosion of other channels like mobile or smart TV or email and SMS and a ton of other things that are now coming, like, for example, the metaverse is now on the way, the web CMS really didn't work anymore, right? So it was a very siloed channel experience, web channel experience, and we needed to now carry that forward to other channels as well. So that's where, in the last few years, there's been the rise of the headless CMS. And the idea of a headless CMS is that you create content once and you publish it in a lot of different channels. You're able to reuse the content, you remove the redundancy. It's structured content, so it's not tied in any way to any one way of displaying the content. So we've now moved from the monolith web CMS world into the headless domain.
Yeah, that's what we are seeing here at Plate as well. Dave is working on a version now that we disconnect data and form, because that's the biggest issue, I think, at this moment for a marketer, that you, in one system, in the CMS, you manage both the content and the channel. And
Yes.
the more channels you add to that system, the complexer the content gets if you build it for only one channel.
Exactly. And you're seeing that, Peter, you're seeing that even in the headless CMS
Yeah.
itself.
Even for content, it's already only
It's
focusing
two
on
channel specific.
Yeah.
It's two channel centric. Exactly.
Yeah.
So that is exactly one of the issues that is happening with the headless CMSs. As you know, it's a great thing that organizations have started to realize that you need to have content structured in a way that it can be reused across multiple channels. But that's, in practicality, that's not actually happening. What's actually happening is organizations still have a very channel centric view of the content, right? So they have a very page centric view. I'm going to go create
Yeah.
a new landing page, and then that landing page has a header banner, and it has a few products, and it has a few promotions, and some, a blog article that it's referring to. So I'm going to go model my content for that landing page, right? But what if we, uh, wanted to reuse that content on mobile, or we want to create a TV app, a smart TV app that is using exactly the same content? Well, the problem is that a lot of times that's not happening because they just never thought about the channel reuse when that content was created
Yeah.
to begin with, right? So I think that's a bit of a dilemma that is happening with the transition from the monolith to the headless CMSs. The old thinking hasn't changed, right?
Yeah.
The thinking is still about the page. I'm creating a landing page, and then that's it, right? They're not seeing it as a, what's the point really
Yeah.
of a headless CMS if you're going to see it from a page centric standpoint?
So would you also say that, like, with the start of the transition to headless solutions, uh, from a content marketer perspective, that the sort of the management or the distribution of the actual content through all these channels, that it completely vanished, or where did that go in the start?
Yeah, so so what's happening in a headless system today is that marketing goes and creates content in a headless CMS, and the display of it is, you're relying on the display of it on the front end code, essentially. So your front end presentation layer, whether it's web or mobile or whatever it may be, that is the thing that is responsible for distributing that content to a specific page, rather than a more centralized way of operating or orchestrating that content that can actually be reused across multiple channels. So this is actually why we had, for the larger enterprises, had built Consia, which is an experience orchestration platform built for marketing teams so that they have the ability to see all of the content that is sitting in multiple headless systems, and are able to orchestrate that content for all of the various channels. So it's very close to the channel itself. You can say, I'm going to go into this channel. I'm looking at web right now. And for web, I'm going to go create a template for the homepage. And on the homepage, I want a headless banner from CMS1. I want featured products from the commerce engine. I want promotions from the promotion engine. I want blogs from another CMS all together, and they're able to orchestrate the experience with a system that is fully centralized and works across all of the various channels. But as I said, this is something that is completely decoupled, right? Decoupling the back end and the front end. And so it's meant for organizations that have a pretty high digital maturity. So
Yeah.
that would be the difference. Yeah.
Is that the biggest difference? Because in the beginning of this episode, you mentioned WordPress. I think WordPress is one of the, let's say, more traditional CMS where everything was in one platform. Commerce, a bit of with WooCommerce or whatever.
Exactly.
Management, channel management, experience management, maybe. And
Exactly.
all, yeah.
Yeah, that is the biggest difference. So what we're doing is I think we've recognized and we've realized what the gap is with the headless CMSs, and we're trying to fill that gap in a way that we don't go back, 20 years. We still stay ahead, we still stay modern, but we are able to give the marketing team the same capabilities that they used to have without sacrificing on the future, right? Because we still need to be able to have a headless CMS drive the content. We want content reuse across channels, because as the number of channels grows, it's almost impossible to maintain a team and a workflow uh, that that is too heavily tied to any specific front end. One thing is the workflow, and the other thing is, um, if you're a larger organization and you're a brand who wants to create consistent and connected experiences across multiple channels, and if your presentation logic is sitting in one channel, right? All of a sudden, you're going to have to not just duplicate the content that is for that channel, also the logic of how you are showing that content, or who should see what content, when and where. There's no centralized way to manage any of that, right? So you end up having disconnected, inconsistent experiences across all the channels. So the point of experience orchestration is to really connect the dots between all of the channels, create that single view of the customer, single view of all of your experiences, in one place, so that you can have that consistency across all the various channels.
Yeah, exactly. So one thing we have been struggling with, or at least thinking about, is so what exactly makes up content? Peter already mentioned that. Well, we had the idea that content is like raw data, so actual text, images, raw images, stuff like that, uh, combined with well, it's what we call shape, or I think you would mention it, front end logic,
Right,
like the
right.
presentation logic. Um, but in the example you just mentioned, so you used Concierge to create to integrate the front end or the presentation logic into the content for a specific channel. Um, so how would you describe like the basic content? So actually the structured content that is part of the CMS, I assume then.
Yeah, so content, I would say, has a pretty broad definition. So any piece of information that you need to be able to convey to the customer is content. So if you're looking at an article, the title of the article, the body of the article, the author of the article, the date it was published, that's all content. If you're looking at a hero banner, for instance, on a page, that is there's an image in it. That image itself is content. Now that image, let's if you talk about, because image is where I think because the presentation and content come very, very close to each other, right? Because you're actually seeing what you get in a way with an image or in a video. I'll give you an example. We have a partner, Cloudinary, for a digital asset management system, right? So they save raw images, right, in the cloud, and then they deliver those raw images in a variety of different ways to the front end,
Yeah.
right? Now, the variety of different ways could be you are scaling the image, you are zooming in on a certain part of the image, you are overlaying the image with some title or some description, all those types of things, right? So there's things that you're doing to the image before you're actually displaying it, before you display that raw image. Now, the difference between content and presentation there is that the raw image is your content, and what you end up seeing at the end is the presentation, right? So if you see a content that is zoomed in, that is there you have now layered on presentation logic on top of your content. And so the integration that we have with Cloudinary in that case is that certain types of people should see the image in a certain way. for instance, right? Like on certain screens, you want to show a different size of the image. So within Consia, a marketer would say, all right, for this type of device or this region or this person, I want a slight transformation or variation of that image. So that is the experience logic that you need to separate out from the actual content. Right? Because imagine otherwise, if you put all of that presentation logic right in the content itself, suddenly you're going to have 100 different variations of the content, right?
Yeah.
And that becomes unmanageable. That becomes completely unmaintainable. Sometimes 1,000 different versions of the same underlying image, right? So you don't want that. You want to keep image pure, like that content completely pure, completely unaware of how it's going to be used on the front end. And you want something else, and that's something else, we call it experience orchestration, something else to determine how to transform or translate that content in a way that makes sense for a specific customer.
Yeah.
Does that,
Yeah.
if that makes sense?
That really makes a lot of sense. So would you then consider so the presentation and the experience equivalent, or would there be a difference between them still?
I would still say that there's a difference between them. So presentation, I see, or the display, the rendering of something is very much tied to the channel itself, right? So channel web, you have React app, right? Mobile, you have a native mobile iOS app, right? And it renders the content that it sees in a certain way. So there's that visual aspect of it. There's a way to display certain information that is very closely tied to the framework, the front end framework that you're using. Now, experience goes beyond just the visual presentation of something. It's who sees what, when, and where, right?
Yeah.
So the who is the customer, the what is the content, and when and where is the context of that customer at any given time. So the experience layer controls the ability to take the content from point A and get, and pass it on, deliver it to point B, which is the presentation, and determine how that content should be either modified or which content should be used at any given point, in any context. And presentation is just the way that it is, simply just the way it's displayed. So I am of a strong opinion that your presentation layer should be dumb. It should not know anything about the who and the what and the when. It should literally get its instructions from that middle layer, which is orchestrating channel logic or presentation logic. So separating out your business logic, your presentation logic from the front end framework itself. Because as soon as you have any logic in that front end, it's redundant now, right? You're now going to have to repeat that logic in 5 different channels if you're interacting with the customer on multiple touch points. So the only thing that should be at the front end level should be just simply the display logic of it. So I have all of this content for these people. I have a layout, a certain layout that things need to fall into. This thing should fall into the top section over here. That should be over here, blah, blah, blah. But not the what content should be displayed.
Yeah, but isn't the role of the Dave dropped and he gets back?
No.
I'm sorry. I have no idea what happened there.
Now you're kind of decoupled, but I will.
Yes, I am.
We decoupled him.
I will delete if it's possible, because we froze you at a really dramatic time.
But can you see my headless me or?
I see now a double Dave. We will fix it in the editing.
Yeah.
Yeah. The question, Sandra, that I had was, isn't the role of the marketer isn't it is it changed a lot since, let's say, the beginning of marketing for web, let's say 10, 50 years ago, compared to right now? Is it way more technical? Is um, um, is the same marketer, let's say, able to do all the stuff that you're mentioning? Because I can follow it, and I have a little bit of, I have a marketing background, and I'm a bit tech, I have a bit of technical skills.
Technical,
How
right.
for me to follow and to
To
distinguish
understand what I'm saying.
yeah,
Yeah. So I would say that definitely you're right about that. So, especially in larger organizations, I think that the digital maturity that is expected of a marketer now is a lot higher. They need to be able to understand what is an API, what
yeah,
is a microservice, what is headless, right? What is cloud native, right? All of those concepts that used to be very much an IT forte are now expected of the marketer. And there shouldn't be, again, in larger organizations, there should not be a divide between IT and marketing anymore. In fact, what I'm seeing from my experience, uh, companies that are starting to move towards more modern frameworks and going through digital transformation have this department called digital, and digital has that is the top, that's the umbrella, and within digital you have people with different skill sets. You have people that understand the marketing side of the world, people who understand the IT world, like how to build the application exactly, or how to enable marketing to do their job. But both of those individuals need to be constantly talking to each other.
yeah,
They need to be able to collaborate in a way that they had never done in the past, because just the sheer plurality of the systems you're dealing with, right? The amount of content coming from a bunch of different places, data coming from a bunch of different places. You're trying to present this information on a ton of different places as well. So it's like n by n matrix that you've literally created here. So in order to really understand that, you have to work together, or you're going to be completely off base
yeah,
if you're working in two different silos,
yeah,
right? In the old world, it was easy, right? You had one channel, you had one web channel, right?
yeah,
Marketing went in and everything was coupled anyway. They saw exactly what they were getting, right? They create content and this is how it appears. They create more content, this is how it appears. So there was not much of a need once the system was operationalized. There wasn't much of a need to have marketing and IT really work really closely hand in hand, unless marketing ran into some problem with the way it worked. Now what I'm saying is, in the new world, even at an operational level, you need IT and marketing talking to each other, not just at a point where there's a handoff to marketing. You're going beyond the handoff. You're now, marketing needs to understand this idea of templates. I'm going to have a template that I'm going to use to populate my content into, right? Then they have to be on the same page with their IT counterparts that, okay, this is
yeah,
the template we're using. Now, marketing's responsibility at an operational level is to make sure the right content shows up in the right spot within the template from the right system. That's what they want to do. But they still need to coordinate with IT to make sure that those templates are defined and they meet their needs the way they expect it to be met, right? Do we have the right number of templates? Do we have all of the configurations covered? Right? No, we came up with something new. We do need another template for this type of a use case, right? But of course, we want to empower marketing as much as possible to be as self-sufficient and make it as self-service for them as possible. But there's gonna be a bit more coordination and orchestration, I would say, that is required even within the organization, and that we need new roles that that need to be defined as well in larger organizations. It's not just content people, it's not just IT, it's
Yeah.
these people in the middle that kind of their content strategy, content design type of people who understand how this content is created and how it should be used at the end. They have to know both sides of the equation to connect the dots between them.
Yeah, exactly. And would you then, in that sense, also separate the job or the task of content creation or content management and experience management or orchestration? Then, like, would you consider that two different jobs, or would a content marketer also create a content experience and at the same time also create the actual content for that content experience?
I think it's gonna change. So there will be there is a content author in
Mhm.
larger organizations, so content creators or content authors, and then there is content strategy folks. In fact, I was just speaking to a very large brand just the other day. I won't name them just for confidentiality. And they have about, I think it's like a 60 people digital team, 60 or 70 people digital team. And they have, 10 content creators, they have UX people, they have creative people, they have content design people, and then they have these people in the middle that are content strategy or content governance, right? And what they do is essentially map out the content roadmap and the content model across the organization to make sure that that content is being reused um, all in the right way, right? So they have to make sure that the content is also created or modeled in a way, is structured in a way that is reusable across multiple systems. If you put HTML and CSS, for instance, right into your content, you're not going to use it again, right? You're going to use it only for that page, for
That
that
channel.
web experience. So you don't do that. You try to keep all of the HTML and CSS completely out of it, and then you put in just the right amount of structured information in the content that is actually going to be reusable, from mobile to web to smart TV. And there are times when there are certain channel specific information that needs to be there, at least available at the content level, like a short description versus a long description. A long description is good for your desktop, it's also good for your smart TV, but we need a really short description for mobile and for maybe your watch, right? But you still don't say that that short description is for mobile, you just say it's short description,
Hmm.
Yeah.
right? So the same short description should be used multiple times in other devices that are smaller, potentially, but you don't tie the content directly to the channel immediately. You make it, you model it in such a way that there's as much, it's almost like a framework. It's a content framework
Yeah.
that you're creating. It's not just content. You have to think about how it can be used across multiple devices, across multiple channels, without naming the channel. So because three different channels may still be able to use the same attribute, right? So that's what I'm seeing. There's a lot of thinking that is coming around this. The jobs are definitely getting redefined. The workflows are getting shuffled around, for sure. But I think it's moving in the right direction, for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
And do you see that companies are struggling with this, let's say, new vision, or can management or the executive team imagine what it's like to lead a company in these days? Or do you see that companies are struggling from a C-level perspective to get it on, let's say, digital or the commercial teams?
Yeah, so I do see the struggle. In fact, I think that without this idea of um, using the content the right way across multiple channels, um, a lot of people just jumped on the bandwagon of headless immediately
Yeah,
without giving it any thought, right?
yeah,
They just said, oh, headless, that's a new thing. Let's just go build. Let's just go implement headless. And then,
Yeah.
as we were talking about earlier, a lot of people built it in a lot of companies built it in a way, or deployed their headless CMSs in a way that were very closely tied to a channel anyway. And so they might as well have not done that. Might as
Yeah.
well have just stayed with the old
Stick with
ways.
verbs.
Yeah, with what they knew, right? So now what happened is they went and implemented this technology in a completely wrong way, right? And now they're struggling. They're like, oh, wait, so now I have to create another channel. I'm being told I need to create this content now for, I'm rolling out a smart TV app. Can I use the same stuff that I just created for the web? No, you can't. So now they have to go back and refactor the work that they did. And now that destroys everything because, you're kind of starting from square one. So
Yeah.
there's a lot of struggle that I'm seeing in organizations where they've just created a mess with
Yeah.
with the older implementations of the headless CMSs. And I think a lot of it goes back to just the industry being new and not knowing how this is all going to roll out in practice. Right? It's good to be theoretical. It's great to know what the vision is, and a lot of the CMS, like the content, headless content platforms that came out originally, had a very like a huge vision, right? That this is going to change the world, right? But when implementation time came, people fell into old habits
Yeah.
very quickly, right? And nobody directed them the right way because it was the easiest thing to do to just tie the content to a channel.
Yeah.
Like you didn't have to think about the long term. It's easy, right? You just go, oh, okay, just put HTML and CSS right in there. We'll just get it right from the CMS. We don't have to worry about how that's gonna how that's gonna be redundant, or like we're creating a mess is unmaintainable, because organizations are funded in a very project centric way. So they're building out a digital property, so they only think about that digital property. They don't think about 5 others that are going to have to suffer later. They have a budget that is associated to this one microsite, for instance. So all of that effort is that they're putting into creating content is only aligned to that one microsite, right? So
Yeah.
this type of thinking requires content governance and content design strategy, and a way of stepping back essentially from a very project centric view to a more holistic view of the organization and the future of the organization,
Yeah. It's
right?
more
And
that's going on instead of
exactly, and that's
instead of
just not
project. Yeah. Yeah.
That's right. It's just not set up that way. A lot of organizations are not set up that way right
Yeah.
now. So there will be struggle, I think, and I think that some of the smaller organizations that went headless, who are not really gonna ever have 5 different channels. They're only gonna have web and mobile potentially, and nothing else. Maybe in that case, it is still like stay headless, but with a headless CMS that gives you that view of what you're creating. And then it is okay to have a bit of redundancy in
Yeah.
those organizations, right? Until they become more mature, right? So I think it's a bit of a transition that people are not realizing. They think of it as a binary, like it's either this or it's either or it's that. I think you need to come in the middle
Yeah.
and see that there's value in platforms that do offer a bit of that presentation logic. It's still separated, but it's like a starting point that you're providing to um, to your customers, and a framework that they can think of a little bit more easily.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
so going back to the content marketeer, I would say that having the content and the presentation or the experience, having them very coupled together, I think
Yeah.
has been very supportive for content authors, content marketeers.
Yes.
Of course, with headless, you're decoupling it.
Yes.
But what would replace that supportive function of like this coupling to the presentation? Is there anything that would support it, or would it just be making a very good content model for these content marketeers, or what would you
I
think?
think you need that. So that was the white space that we saw in the market, which was the experience orchestration layer that connects your content to the presentation, right? So you're able to translate, you're able to pick and choose what content shows up where on front ends or on what part of the page or whatnot. And now recently, as I said, like we've created this preview layer,
Yeah,
which ties you to the front end. Like you can basically pick a front end framework of your choice. It could be React or Next.js or like whatever you want it to be. And you can, within the centralized experience orchestration interface, you can actually now see the preview of your content. So we're trying to bridge that gap that marketers have had with the headless platforms, but not just for any one CMS.
mhm,
What we're trying to do is make it agnostic of the backend
yeah,
completely. So you could have 10 different backends,
mhm,
and a page may be building an experience, or you may be building an experience on mobile that is driven or relying on, a PIM and a CMS and a commerce engine and search and promotions engine, which are all different services behind the scenes. But marketing has a full 360 view of all of your backend
yeah,
and all of your front ends at the same time in one location. So just bringing some a little bit of structure to the madness, I would say. I
Yeah.
think the much needed sanity
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
we're trying to bring for
yeah.
larger organizations.
It is a real challenge.
It is a real challenge. It really is. I completely agree. And that's like we kept hearing that over and over and over again. That, and a lot of times I think people have become disillusioned
Mhm,
because of the headless regime. They think that this is just crazy. It's just
Yeah.
meant for IT. This is not really
Yeah.
built for business at all, right? So we're trying to help with that perception. We do absolutely believe that headless is the way to go. You do need headless if you
Yeah.
are to scale your operations beyond one channel. You have
Yeah.
to have that. But you
Yeah.
also need the other side. You need to acknowledge that marketers have real pain because of headless and fix it
yeah,
as well.
yeah,
And I think you have to do with the technical, more the product issues, but also with the educational stuff,
Yes.
because you have
Yeah.
to re-educate how you think about experiences or
Yeah.
content or data or whatever. Yeah.
Yes,
Nice.
and I think that's the problem with any new category. When you're building a brand new
Yeah.
category, if there's not enough education around it, it doesn't sell very easily,
No.
right? If people don't know, like headless took 10 years
Yeah.
to get big enough, and now it's at least people get it to some degree.
Yes. Yeah.
They
Yeah.
get it. They know there's issues, but they get the idea of what a
Yeah.
headless
Yeah.
platform is. Experience orchestration is brand new. So it's
Yeah.
going to be only the visionaries that are
Yeah.
out there who are really able to understand that what the real problems are under the hood, and they have enough digital maturity to take that next step, who are going to be the first buyers of an experience orchestration platforms, right? And maybe in 3 years or 4 years, we'll see some of it will go down market. It will go into, other companies that are now that are not as mature yet, but are trying to get there, right? But I think it's a long hype cycle. We're talking like 10 years
Yeah.
hype cycle for it to get to that level of maturity that headless is at today. And
True.
headless is not that far either.
No. No. So you're in there for the long run, Sana.
Yeah, we're in here for
Really long.
definitely a lot.
Yeah.
But I'm passionate about it, right? I love the stuff. I get the market. I understand where we are, and I find the satisfaction in the journey of
Yeah.
going
Yeah.
from where it is today to 10 years from now, where wow, people actually get it now, and
Yeah.
I was a
Yeah.
part of it. I was a part of making people understand, um, what is missing today.
And I think that mindset is crucial when you want to build a new category.
Oh
Otherwise,
yes. Or you're
uh,
not gonna get there. You just stop. You just,
yeah,
you just give up right
yeah.
right at the beginning. And trust me, I've had thoughts about giving up as well at the
I,
beginning. This is like it's impossible. You talk to a new person, and every
yeah,
single time you say the same thing again. You
yeah,
explain the same ideas, and it can get you feel like a broken record at
yeah,
times,
yeah,
right? But I what I also find cool is that every time I talk to somebody new, I find a new way of explaining something based on something they've said,
yeah,
and it fine tunes the message a little
yeah,
bit more
Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
every single time. So it's actually kind of interesting. It's not like I'm repeating something that I've said like 10
Yeah.
times before. I'm changing it slightly
Refining.
every time I talk. Refining, yeah, yeah. So that refinement's also kind of fun. It's not as boring anymore because of that.
the business feedback
Definitely.
loop.
It's
Yeah,
a feedback loop. Exactly.
yeah,
Exactly. All right. Well, I
cool.
think we're over time, quite a bit over time,
Yeah,
actually.
absolutely. Thank you very much, Sarah. It was nice to speak to you.